Hi, this is Peter Woolfolk speaking. Now, first of all, thank you so very much for listening to the podcast. Now, I am very excited to let you know that the podcast is now available on Amazon Alexa. You know the drill. Simply say, Alexa, play Public Relations Review Podcast, and she'll take it from there. And again, thank you for listening. And if you enjoy the program, please become a subscriber. Now, on to the podcast.
Welcome. This is the Public Relations Review Podcast, a program to discuss the many facets of public relations with seasoned professionals, educators, authors, and others. Now, here is your host, Peter Woolfolk.
Welcome to the Public Relations Review Podcast and to our listeners all across America and around the world. Now, by the way, data does show that this broadcast is heard in over 80 countries around the world, covering over 1,000 cities. So no matter where you are, we certainly say thank you very much for listening. And 70 to 80% of our listeners are right here in the U.S. of A. Now, as public relations professionals, we all depend on quality resources to better prepare for our projects and a method to determine the effectiveness of those projects. One of the more prominent quality resources is Burrelles. Founded in 1888, Burrelles is one of the most trusted and credible partners in the media data services industry. Burrelles provides targeted media outreach, comprehensive monitoring, and measurement services. Their analytics gives you the ability to quickly assess industry trends and extract valuable insights. You can build media contact lists based on beat, location, and media type. You can create and distribute press releases, templates, and media alerts using the accurate global database of over 860,000 contacts. And they offer comprehensive media monitoring services. Well, it's no surprise. My guest today is Tressa Robbins. Tressa is Vice President of Customer Onboarding for Burrelles, and she joins us today from Piedmont, Missouri. Tressa, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Peter. It's good to be here today with you.
Look, first of all, tell us, what does the Vice President of Customer Onboarding do?
Yeah, my primary responsibility is to, as soon as someone comes on board with Burrelles and subscribes to whichever services they are subscribing to, then I am sort of the first touch point for that client to train them first to kind of have a conversation with them about how they intend to use the data and whatever it is that we're doing for them, whether it's monitoring or measurement or whatnot, and then train them on how to use the existing tools that are in place to best fulfill their needs, which is why those conversations always start with questions. Even though they've already signed on board, it helps me target sort of their training toward the parts of the portal and tools that'll best serve them, rather than trying to cover everything, which can be a little overwhelming sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my primary responsibility. I do have some secondary and tertiary responsibilities that I've taken on in the past couple years, but the core is new customer onboarding.
Okay. Well, let's start with targeted media outreach. Tell us exactly how that works, because you say that you have 860,000 contacts around the globe?
That is correct. At one point, I believe it was over 1 million, but as we all know, in the last few years, especially during the global pandemic, the news media has taken a pretty big hit as far as newsrooms closing and consolidating and things. But in addition to removing contacts, we have also added a significant number of contacts. So it's not all bad news for traditional media. However, in that database, which is kind of where that usually starts, is with subscribing to the database, there are not just those traditional print and broadcast journalists, but it also includes online media. And some online media has a print or broadcast counterpart, some does not. Some are solely online. It also includes influencers. Typically those are not what you think of like social media influencers so much, but more industry influencers in whatever that vertical is, and can include bloggers and industry analysts as well. So it really is comprehensive in being able to, for the client to be able to find those contacts that are really pertinent.
Well, considering that podcasts are part of that outreach now, do you include podcast shows as part of your listing?
We do. It's been a recent addition as podcast has taken off, also during the pandemic, as I'm sure you and your listeners are well aware. We have started adding podcasts. We monitor podcasts, too, which I know we'll get to in a moment. So we're still building up that podcast side. But yes, we do have a pretty good number in there now and are continuing to add to that.
Mm-hmm. And I can say directly that at least in the last year or so, I've certainly been getting calls and pitches or email pitches from organizations that specialize in placing guests on podcasts. And I'm not going to call names, about one or two of them have been a wee bit inaccurate because they know I only talk about public relations here. So if you are selling flowers or tractors, then I'm not the person you should be calling. So
sure. Well, and that actually brings up a really good point in that in the database that we provide, it doesn't just supply names and emails and phone numbers and that kind of thing. It also includes like the 20 most recent tweets that person has sent, which often gives an idea of what that person is thinking and talking about at any given moment in time. It also includes links to recent articles they've written, links to their other social media profiles, and even some background information. Mm-hmm. So it allows the person to really use their head and not just rely on these blanket searches, which, as you just described, can come up with very erroneous results, mm-hmm. which means that you're wasting time, and no one in this business or any others, I suppose, want to waste their valuable time or their clients' valuable time.
Well, considering the fact that over 800,000 contacts, how often do you update that information, and how often and how is that information transmitted to the people who are your clients using that particular service?
Very good question. It's a never-ending process. It's constantly being updated, literally on a daily basis. Thousands of updates are made. For the most part, the larger media outlets are going to be more frequently updated than maybe some of those smaller ones, but the majority of the updates are made proactively through our own monitoring of changes in the media. If we see a certain person who's been writing for this outlet, now they're writing or broadcasting for another, we need to find out, are they now freelancing? Are they a contributor? Or did they change news outlets? Whatever that might be. Also, because direct email distribution is included in that database, we're alerted really quickly when there is something like a bounce back indicating that someone might no longer be there. Mm-hmm. And so those are followed up on. And then, of course, just following various global news feeds. And then they are actually reached out to directly. We don't rely on any other information. We reconfirm everything with those particular individuals. Well, and just as a kind of a point of reference, for an example, I believe in the month of May there were something like 170,000 edits and verifications of records made. And that's not even counting who was removed or who was added and all those kind of things. Hmm. So it's a massive undertaking. And as I said, never ending.
Well, I can imagine with that many people spread across the globe that you've got your hands full. There's no question about that.
Certainly.
Now, about the wide range of types of organizations that are using this media outreach, are we talking about governments, universities, what sort of organizations are using that?
I always find that really interesting, Peter, because while certainly, large public relations agencies, large brands, Fortune 1000 companies, those you sort of expect to be monitoring and out, reaching out to the media on behalf of their brand or organization or client in the case of the firms. But we find that there are lots of other types of companies that are using these services in slightly non-traditional public relations or media relations ways. So I don't know if there really is a typical client. I guess, obviously it's predominantly going to be those in the PR and media relations industries. But I'm always surprised by different ways that people are looking for and using that. And sometimes it's things like they want to submit an actual contributed article rather than just pitching someone as an expert in a particular industry.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of different ways that people are using it.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, your monitoring services, once those press releases and articles and so forth have gone out, folks need to see who's picking them up and using them. So how does your monitoring service work?
It works in a couple of different ways, and we have multiple options that really get rather extensive because we really believe that it should be a consultative service. Certainly people can come on board and just say, here's what we want you to monitor, and here's what we want you to not monitor, and that kind of thing. But we also act as counsel to those folks because sometimes they may want to monitor one thing, but they may start finding that there are other things out there that they really should know about. So it's a combination, to specifically answer the question, it's a combination of Boolean search logic, artificial intelligence, and then layered on top of that, we offer curated services, which is what Burrelles has historically been known for, especially on the print side. Despite all the rhetoric about the news is dying, there still are an awful lot of people that care about print.
Right.
But we do so much more than that, which I think sometimes is also forgotten. Folks of a certain age always knew Burrelles as the print clipping people, but we certainly have not stayed that over the years. So between the Boolean logic and searching, some artificial intelligence to help screen particular stories or broadcasts, then we can layer on top of that human editors who will look through it, with human logic that only humans can do, and re-verify and make sure this is exactly what that client is looking for. So that they're not wasting a lot of times with a massive amount of irrelevant or unrelated media.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I think of monitoring or looking for something, I'm going straight to Google to look for it, type it in there, and hope that it pops up. But there are actually other search engines available to folks. Probably people don't think about them, but do you use other search engines, and how many might you use in terms of doing your searches?
Well, we actually have aggregated feeds that get fed directly to us. We go so far beyond Google searches. I can't remember now what the most recent statistics are, is how many actual media outlets Google News brings back, but it is literally a single-digit percentage of the amount that Burrelles is combing through on a daily basis.
Mm.
So it's not that we're going out and actively searching the web per se. It's that we're using aggregated feeds from companies that do just that. And then we also have our own proprietary feeds and sources that we go to. So it's a combination.
So again, we're looking at monitoring television, radio, online services, podcasts. Those are the ones that I think about right now. So I mentioned social media. So all of those are included in monitoring.
That's correct. They can be. Not everyone always wants all of those.
Okay.
So that's another way that we can customize things. Some people think they can find this stuff online on their own. We often find they're not finding a lot of it, but that's okay. If that's their choice, we can do just print, or we can do just broadcast, or we can do very comprehensive, as you described, which is most forms of media that are out there right now.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it depends on the organization. Some people might want to do this for various reasons. Maybe TV stations because they want to be on top of news. But suppose there's an organization that only needs monitoring for one particular thing. Maybe they just had a major event or announcement or creation or whatever. Can they do it on a one-time basis, or how do you set that up?
Yeah, they can. Usually news trickles in, even if it's a rather large event or announcement, may land in the bigger media on a certain day or week, but then may get picked up by smaller outlets or get discussed on podcasts or on social media later when it becomes a little more known out there. I've seen that happen so many times. So usually it's a 3-month minimum. We can do less than that. Certainly the economies of scale dictate that they're going to get better pricing and probably better results over longer terms. Mm-hmm. But we certainly can do those one-off events or things. And we have clients who come back to us every year just for a particular event that happens, let's say in the summer, since, of course, that's when a lot of public events happen, pre-COVID anyway, and that are starting to come back now in parts of the country. And so they'll come on for just a few months, and they'll monitor ahead of it and then also through it and after it, which is honestly the best way to do it, so that they're picking everything up, leading up to it, and then, again, during it and afterwards.
Well, now that you've mentioned the fact that they want to look at the results, so let's talk about the measurement sides of things. Mm-hmm. How do you go about doing that in these various areas that you look into?
Sure. Well, I think pretty much all monitoring services out there offer some sort of automated measurement and analytics, and Burrelles is no different in that respect. Things can be, once they're put into one of the portals that we provide, you can pull all those basic, I don't even like to call them metrics, but basic figures, things like circulation or unique monthly visitors or reach or location. Sometimes that's very important, that kind of thing. But then I think where Burrelles really excels is in customized media measurement and metrics. That allows the client, again, whether it's a brand or in-house or agency, to get really specific about what they need. Mm-hmm. Whether it is gaining competitive insights and they need to hear share a voice or see that, whether it's maybe a deeper understanding of topics and issues or gauging brand awareness and sentiment, or, a big thing now, especially for those in the health industry and in the travel industry, they're kicking back up, is monitoring for and combating misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation, as I'm now hearing. Mm-hmm. So some of those other things may not matter to that particular company. They need those insights, and they need targeted insights. And again, through a combination of artificial intelligence with human analysts with years of experience, we're able to provide custom measurement, reporting, graphs, charts, whatever it is that they need.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think about, you mentioned certain areas, but in terms of percentages of industries that use you, in terms of government, when I think about education, I think about colleges and universities, businesses, travel. Mm-hmm. How have you looked at where the largest percentages of your business comes from in terms of industries?
I have not personally. I'm sure someone within the organization has a beat on that. I don't, because I'm typically training them after the fact. I would say that PR agencies, small and large, are probably the biggest chunk, but they could be representing all different kinds of industries. Mm-hmm. We do have a lot of travel brands. We have entertainment brands. Education, as you mentioned, is also a big one. But we even have organizations like, historical societies or tourism and government agencies. And we did used to sort of split those up where people handled certain verticals, but we found that there is so much that where they overlap that's not necessarily necessary. So we can adapt. Most of us have been here a long time, so we've kind of seen it all, although we are occasionally surprised. But, I don't know that there's one or two agencies that dominate our client base.
Okay. Well, Tressa, you have provided us with an awful lot of information. Let me ask you, have we overlooked anything that you think that the audience should know about Burrelles and what they offer?
Well, I'm a firm believer that the client's needs should dictate the tools that they use and not the other way around, meaning that people often hear a company's name relatively frequently because they do a great job at their own PR and marketing. But that may not, just because they're a bigger name or maybe more well-known because of their presence, they may not be the best solution. So I think it's prudent for people to shop that around a little bit and be specific, not to be afraid to say, here's exactly what I'm looking for. Can you provide that or not? Because we find sometimes people will disengage with us, go to another company, and only for them to come back several months or a year or whatever their contract term was and say, yeah, they said they did it, but they really don't. And we're not afraid to put the proof out there. So I just feel like people should really do their due diligence. I think that's a really key component, and think about what they need versus what's easier or maybe even what's less expensive.
One of the things that I think that sort of supports what you've said, when you look at an organization that was founded in 1888 and is still functioning today, that speaks volumes. I think it really, really does.
I think it does too, and I think that the longevity of the employee base here at Burrelles also says a whole lot about the company. I've been here 23 years. I don't know exactly what the average tenure is, but I believe it is around 15 to 20 years, meaning we have people who've been here 30 years. We have very few who've been here under 5. So we've been doing this a really long time.
and obviously you're good at it too.
Obviously, we're still around. We're still kicking. We're still, looking forward. We're still making changes. We're always launching new things. We are a privately held company. We're not public, so it's not quite as critical to us to make all of those things known to the public, but certainly people contacting us and our clients are well aware of the advancements we're making.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned launching any new things. Have you launched anything new recently?
We actually have, so thank you for asking. We've launched a couple of new things, but probably the most important is a new portal. And people talk about web portals all the time as sort of something that is static, and it's not. We're constantly adding to it. We launched a new portal probably, the years start to run together, Peter, so forgive me. Maybe it was 6 or 7 years ago. And even though we've kept that a growing, living thing, we're still finding that people are moving forward, and we have to adapt in order to provide the clients what they need. So the newer portal will allow them to do all that comprehensive monitoring in one place rather than, often you're going to one place for TV and broadcast, you're going to another tool or place for social and so forth. This new one will allow people to either segment it or combine it all so they really get that 360-degree view, which is so critical these days. Nothing happens in a vacuum or is isolated.
Well, it certainly sounds like a great idea to go to one place and get everything you need. That sounds like efficiency, if certainly nothing else, and saving time. So I'm sure people certainly appreciate that.
Absolutely. Time is money.
Time is money. Well, Tressa, let me say thank you so very, very much for joining us today. My guest today has been Tressa Robbins, and Tressa is the Vice President of Customer Onboarding for Burrelles. And as we mentioned earlier, Burrelles has been around since 1888, so that certainly says a lot about the company and the quality of products and services that they offer. So, Tressa, once again, thank you so very, very much. To my listeners, let me say thank you again for listening. And if you've enjoyed it, we'd certainly like to get a review from you. And please tell your listeners and your colleagues about the Public Relations Review podcast and join us for our very next edition. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is produced by Communication Strategies, an award-winning public relations and public affairs firm headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, this is Peter Woolfolk. First, let me say thank you so much for being a listener. Now, I want to alert you to our shiny new podcast website located at podpage.com. However, you can go directly to the podcast site located at publicrelationsreviewpodcast.com. There, you can contact me through email. You can leave a voice message. You can leave a review. You can read an episode blog and frequently learn about the podcast guests. You might also want to suggest podcast topic ideas or even suggest a guest. You can also let me know if you would like to receive our podcast listener logo that you can post on your social media. So I look forward to hearing from you about our new podcast website. Thank you so much for listening to the Public Relations Review podcast and have a great day.